right, team. Coach Dana Cavalea here, checking in with you at the Becoming a Champion show. And today I have an awesome episode with one of my favorites, Adam Carolla. This guy's hysterical, but today he was actually a little bit serious, and he was telling us about his life, how he got started, how he broke into Hollywood, and how he has had an amazing career as a comedian, as a radio host, and as somebody that really has a unique look at life from the common sense perspective. And he's funny and he's totally enjoyable to sit down with. So I hope you enjoy today's episode with Adam Carolla on the Becoming a Champion show. And if you do, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, and give us some comments. So how we doing today?
Doing well.
We're the Adidas boys today. I like it.
No.
Unplanned.
Yeah, unplanned. All right, let's do it, man.
So yeah, I wanted to have you on the show. As you know, I've always been a big fan of you, and we had a good time talking life last time I was on your show. But I wanted to give my audience a chance to really sit with you for a little while. And I wanted to start off with just really asking you, how did you grow up? I love to learn people's personal stories and learn about what it was like as a young Adam Carolla finding his way to the top.
Well, I don't know if I've made it to the top, but thanks for that description of my life. I started off near the bottom. I lived in North Hollywood, California, just a suburb in the San Fernando Valley. Very there wasn't much Hollywood or Los Angeles to it at all. Just sort of middle class area. I grew up in a broken down old 100-year-old house, one bedroom and one bathroom, and I slept out on the service porch, which was sort of converted into my bedroom. It was the house of my grandparents who bought it for, I think, $10,000 in like 1953 as a rental property. But when it became clear that my mom and my dad were struggling and, couldn't really afford rent or their own house or whatever, they just sort of let us flop out in their house, which, again, just no central air, no central heat, just a very old rickety house from the Valley. The Valley had a bunch of houses from like turn of the century, and then they've slowly been sort of bulldozed and little mega mansions have been built there. But back then, it was just a bunch of single family homes, no second stories. And that's how I grew up. My mom was depressed. She was a welfare, food stamps kind of person. I just grew up poor and, lunch meal tickets and, free spaghetti night at the church and, just kind of made my way. My parents were pretty standoffish. They weren't very, very involved. They were kind of depressed and kind of in their own world. And I just sort of drifted out of the house and had my friends and rode my bike for 10 hours a day. And eventually, when I was about 7, I discovered football, tackle football, and I just threw myself into it because it was really the only thing I was good at. Sort of found a home and some structure and some discipline and some, males that seemed to care. And that was my life, just playing football, living in the Valley, very bad student, and just kind of got along.
Did you want to go to college and play football?
It was kind of tough because I did have some offers to go to college, scholarships when I got out of high school from some colleges that people had heard of, not exactly football powerhouses, UC Davis, Cal Poly Pomona, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, Marshall was probably the only place I got a letter from that people had heard of in terms of, football programs. But I was such a horrible student. I never took the SATs. I never took high school algebra. I just took like high school math. So these two ideas were sort of competing with one another. The notion that I was going to go to college scholastically seemed like, a bridge too far. But on the other hand, I did have some recruitment letters from colleges to go to college. Ultimately, I didn't.
Yeah. So for you, how did you get to where it is that you are, right? You said you're not on top, but you're ahead of a lot of other people. there are people today that have this dream of getting to maybe where it is that you are, but how did you get there? What were some of your strategic moves as a young man that grew up in the household that you just described?
Um, well, I was always, even though I was a horrible student, I always had a sense of humor. So I was always kind of considered kind of fast on his feet and sort of bright, but not really in a scholastic setting.
Mm.
And it wasn't like it was ever pointed out to me by teachers or counselors or parents or anybody else. But I did understand that I could kind of make people laugh. I was kind of a cut up. I would entertain the class and then, get disciplined, have to go stand out in the hall. But I understood I could make a group of people laugh. And so when I got out of high school, I was just kind of as low as you can get. I was just living in the garage of my dad's house. My parents were divorced by then.
Mm.
And there weren't really any job opportunities. And I didn't really have an education or direction or any kind of training or expertise. So I found myself just sort of drifting from, construction site to construction site, just asking if they needed some labor, somebody I could mow someone's lawn or something, like really literally just sort of like I was 13 trying to save up for a 10-speed or something.
Mm.
And at some point, after about a year living in the garage and not really finding anything, I got a call from a friend of mine on like a Wednesday night that just said he's on a job site and they're remodeling a house in Silver Lake. And they need someone to come in and just basically pull ivy off the side of the house and put it in the dumpster. Just real grunt work, labor. And I was like, yeah, I'm in, $7 an hour, pick me up tomorrow morning on your way in. And he picked me up. And I thought it was like a 1-day gig where I was going to just make $60 or something. And, but I was always a real hard worker and I was strong, from playing sports and I was always good to go. So, my attitude was good and my back was strong. And I guess I did a pretty good job pulling the ivy off the side of the house. And they just said, yeah, come back tomorrow. That's okay. And I dug ditches and, it was a crap job, very labor intensive, but that was it. I was off and running. So I became a laborer. I saved up a couple of paychecks, moved out into an apartment with a couple guys, like a 1-bedroom in North Hollywood, $450 a month. We whacked it up like 3 ways. At some point, I rode a motorcycle. At some point, the foreman said, if you got a pickup truck, if I got a pickup truck, you give me another $1 an hour. So I said, fine. So I bought like a $900 old Mazda pickup truck and showed up my pickup truck. And that was it. I was like, well, for now, you've got to do this. You have no alternatives. You have no family, no safety net, no infrastructure around you. You just have to work 50 hours a week, digging ditches, and hopefully make your way from digging ditches outside to getting inside the house and maybe doing a little carpentry, even though I wasn't a carpenter. I had no skills. But at some point, dug ditches for 3-6 months, whatever. Eventually sort of made my way inside of the house. I used to take a little bit out of my paycheck every week and buy like a new tool, set of tool bags, the stuff I saw what the carpenters had in their tool bags. You needed a skill saw, you needed tool bags, your tool bags had to be outfitted with a speed square and a tape measure and a keel, which is just a crayon pencil combination, whatever. And I said, that's what I did. And so eventually I became sort of a apprentice carpenter, probably worked my way up to $10 an hour, drove my beater pickup truck, lived in my apartment. And, at a certain point I got into my early 20s and I kind of looked around and I thought, is this it? Like, is the plan because the plan on the job site was to get from $7 an hour to $10 an hour to $13 an hour. By the way, a buck at a time.
Mm.
And eventually you could be a carpenter and they'd get $15 an hour. But I started kind of thinking about it. I was like, I don't have health insurance. I don't have days off. Christmas. We didn't get paid for Christmas. We'd always do a half day going into Christmas and then come back the day after Christmas because no one could afford, taking 2-3 days off.
Yeah.
For Christmas. You didn't get paid. So I was sitting in my apartment in North Hollywood and I sort of thought, now there's got to be something. Maybe there's a chance for something better than this. And so I started thinking about comedy because I knew I was good at comedy. I mean, I knew I was funny. I just didn't, I didn't have any training or anything. I didn't know what to do with it. I couldn't read or write very well. So I thought, it's going to be tough writing, working as a writer or reading scripts or doing things like that. But maybe there's just something for me to do in the comedy world somehow. And so I talked to some people because I lived in North Hollywood, but I knew people. There was always somebody whose mom worked for some production or something like that. I had a couple of friends who lived up in the hills and their parents were sort of in the industry. And I talked to one of their moms and I just said, where should I go? What should I do? How could I train in comedy? Because I think my mindset was sort of like yours in sports. Like, I want to train. I'm not just going to go, give me a microphone. Where's the stage? Yeah. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I could train. And she said, take a Groundlings class. It's an improv troupe in Hollywood. And I went down and I watched a show at the Groundlings and I thought, oh, this seems like something I could really do. And so I just, got $275 saved up and bought my way into a Groundlings class.
It's amazing how it works, huh? You just, you go from what I always say for me in my life, I always say pain leads to the next opportunity. Sometimes it's like you realize, okay, I'm doing this carpentry thing. This is great for now, but what's next? Can't see myself doing this for the next 20 years. So you had that jump off point where you get into comedy. So you join the class, you're a total rookie. How does one begin to find their voice and decide on like, hey, I'm funny, but this is what I'm going to be funny about?
You start to realize that your strength is sort of in your experiences. I played sports. I was a carpenter. I had a kind of a blue collar kind of base. So, while other guys were trained, they went to college, they were theater majors, they were Shakespearean actors, and they'd done a lot of plays and stuff like that. Mine was more of a kind of a blue collar, kind of homespun, everyman kind of base with maybe a little interesting twist on it that was a little more intellectual. But I really didn't think much about it. I just showed up and I did what they told me to do.
Okay.
And that was it. And I went from one class, I graduated from my basic class, and they said, you're funny, but you don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to act. You don't know where to stand. You don't know when they say upstage, downstage, stage right, stage left. I was always walking the wrong direction. The whole group was moving downstage. I was going the other way. I didn't know anything. So they said, well, you're funny. Because that was always kind of the consensus that people were sort of like, well, we know you're funny, but who cares? So what are we going to do with it? But the Groundlings, obviously that was their business. So they were a little more savvy. So they were like, you're funny. You can't act. You don't know what you're doing. So go take an acting class and then come back after you take your acting class. And then we'll put you in the intermediate class. So I went and took another, $200 that I didn't have. And I gave it I didn't have car insurance, but I cobbled together, a couple $100 to take an acting class, and I took an acting class.
Okay. That's an interesting business model they have, just tell you what you suck at, send you back out and ask you for another 200 on the way back.
Well, I didn't give it to them. I gave it
to the acting class. Okay.
I gave it to the acting class. I was like, I don't even know where there is an acting class. And they were like, go to this place over here in Studio City and ask for so-and-so and give them the money and sign up for the acting class. And when you're done, come back.
How much of this stuff though, like, can you just figure out, through just good old reps, someone to guide you, but just good reps, showing up and taking the reps, or for, cause there's so many people that are classically trained and you can feel that versus a guy that, like you said, is more blue collar, more real. Just, you could tell he's gotten some bumps and bruises along the way.
I don't know. My feeling was I had as much kind of God-given funny as I needed, but I needed to tap into it. I needed to find it. It's no different than what you do. You have someone who has all the physical skills or the gifts, and I had the physical, or I should say the mental skills and gifts, but I didn't have the reps. I didn't have the technique. I didn't have the training. I didn't have the experience, so I was always very humble, which is I don't really need to work on getting funnier. That I got. I need to tap into it. I need to figure out a way to access it.
And in doing that, because I've seen this a lot, some people, they lose themselves in that journey because they try to be like, they see somebody and they say, I need to be more like that. And I need to be more like that. And before you know it, they forget who they are. How did you stay true to yourself, to the messaging that you were looking to put out, to the attitude? How did you stay true to all that along the way?
I never really thought of it as staying true. I looked at myself as this sort of a blank sheet of paper.
Okay.
And I needed to sort of paint my own portrait on it. I wasn't really thinking like, here's your point of view, or here's who you are, or here's how you're seen. I had a thought of nobody's going to hand you anything. I didn't think, I wasn't going to be sitting at a malt shop and some talent scout was going to tap on my shoulder and go, you're the next Johnny Bravo. I was just like, no one's going to give you anything. I kind of figured that out from my own family. But if you work real hard and you show up and you're that much better than everyone around you, then maybe you can give something to yourself.
Yeah, no, I love that approach. I think a lot of people today are used to things or thinking things will be handed to them because, in some instances they are. So
but very few.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like too, as an athlete, as somebody that grew up in the environment that you did, you learned that there were no handouts. And, cause I've heard today, some people say, well, they're not getting to where it is that they should go or could go because of how they grew up. But again, you're saying it somewhat worked to your advantage.
It did. I think it did work to my advantage. I looked at myself as sort of invisible, and I looked at myself as someone who was going to have to not only be equal to everyone around me, but much better in order to get an equal shot. So I sort of thought to myself, going back to football, I don't need to be as good as the guy who's starting at linebacker, whose position I'd like to take. I need to be demonstrably better than that person. So because if we're both the same, I don't think the coach is going to notice or make the move. And if I'm 5% better, I don't know if the coach is going to notice or make a move. I need to be 50% better than the competition, and then someone will take notice. So that's kind of how I looked at it.
And with that, how do you challenge yourself today? I mean, again, you have a lot that you've achieved behind you. How do you stay motivated? How do you stay hungry today?
Well, I'm very much, all roads kind of lead back to the kind of athletics, but, in your parlance, you're basically as good as your last at bat. You know what I mean? Like comedy, it's not much different than that. You could be the world's greatest whatever, but if you struck out and fouled out your last 10 times to the plate, then that's who you are now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if you think about all these people that have come and gone in Hollywood and comedy and big names and big voices and, people you remember from the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, you can't even remember them today, and that's because this town and the audience really has a really short memory. Like you could be doing gangbusters and a year and a half goes by and it's like you're not really in demand anymore. So for me, it's always a sense of you got to get up every day. You have to prove it. You have to earn it. You have to work. And also, I never really treated show business any differently than I treated work. You know what I mean? Like you have to get up, you have to go to work. People say, oh, you do so much or you work so hard or you're always doing a show on the weekends or you're traveling or whatever it is, you're writing a book or whatever. I go, let's just work, and then they go, yeah, but you're working so hard. I go, yeah, but look, do you ever say that to a roofer?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You just get up at 6 a.m. You're on the job rolled out by 7 and you're roofing till 3:30, 4 o'clock. And then you come home, that's a job. That's how I look at show business or entertainment or the creative process. Like it is a job. You have to get up, you have to go to work.
How do you work it and still stay creative? Because I mean, sometimes, as you're saying that, I could see some people saying, well, it becomes pressure, it becomes a grind. How do you continue to do it and still stay creative though?
I really just sort of let my mind sort of try to go to a neutral place. And I always sort of say, kind of your position comedically should be, and this is a term you'll probably like, but I always say like good improv, it's like being a center fielder. You need to be in this sort of balanced position. You can't be leaning right, leaning left, moving forward. Your job is to be right in the middle. And if you're perfectly balanced, as soon as that ball comes off the bat, you're already full gallop, right? Like you're gone. You know what I mean? Back, forward, right, left, whatever, power alley, you're there, And I sort of thought, the times you get into trouble as an improvisational comedian and as a center fielder is starting to move before the ball comes off the bat. Get into a neutral position. Just try to get that homeostasis, that balance. It doesn't mean standing there with your hands in your pocket. It means literally taking the position that the posture that a center fielder has right as the pitch is delivered. Be in that position comedically, and then you can go any direction you want. And for me, that's always kind of the challenge, which is try to get into that balanced position and then process the information that comes at you and then move.
Yeah, no, I love that. I actually have images of being in center field, and it's a very unique position to be in because the field is so balanced. Everything is right in front of you. So I love how you put that. And when you say an improvisational comedian, I mean, you have a script, right? Or how does it work? Because I mean, I don't know a whole lot about preparing, to be on stage as a comedian. And I'm sure a lot of other people don't either. I mean, how do you do it? How do you come up with a show? How do you do that?
Well, you work out material and you have, usually like a set list of like, here's the stuff, here's the material. Some of it is sort of tried and true. Some of it falls under the heading of I'm working on it, or I'm trying it out, or I'm trying to find the moments in it. There's another part where there's a kind of improvised section within the material where you're talking about something that is planned and then going off into other directions within what you planned. And then there's just going up on stage and doing a live podcast, which I do as well, which is completely improvised. So, and then there's the podcast, which is taking a buck slip and writing. I'll show you a buck slip, but just carrying around a little cardboard piece of paper and jotting down little notes and little ideas and little things that aren't
a big one.
Yeah, they're not that well worded or thought out, but it's just beats for some ideas that maybe we can discover.
Okay.
Some comedy within, or some truth or something within. So it goes from, scripted stuff like writing a book, which is, very, very scripted, obviously, to doing a more loosely scripted stand-up routine to doing a completely unscripted podcast or just being up on stage improvising. So for me, it's sort of important to figure out what the application is and then do it to the best of your ability.
Yeah. What I like about that is too, you have so many different, from the show to the stand-up, it's just nothing seems to be the same all the time. So it's a very dynamic environment that you seem to always be in, which I would think makes you better.
Yeah, I think if you look at yourself as sort of an MMA fighter or something, and don't spend too much time on just the hands. You got to get your jujitsu in there, and you got to get some grappling and some wrestling. Like, spend an equal amount of time to just make you a more well-rounded fighter.
Yeah. Are you somebody that is somebody that could be a little bit obsessive at times with your planning and with your preparation?
No, I'm not. I have definite thoughts about, how I would like things to work and what I would like to do, but I don't have a real rigid kind of here's what. I kind of migrate in between just a complete lack of preparation and then a lot of preparation. And I really don't have one mode. It is sort of depends on the application, So if Jay Leno says, we're going to come over tonight, I'm going to film some stuff for my TV show, we're going to talk about your cars, I just go, yeah, come on over. And I don't think about it again. If I'm going to do a hit on Tucker Carlson, he'll go, I want to talk about X, Y, and Z. And then I'll jot down some notes, some beats, some thoughts about it. If I am doing the audiobook, one of my audiobooks, then I got the book open. I'm reading the actual pages, verbatim oftentimes. So there's not a one size fits all. It kind of depends what the application is.
Yeah. I asked that because today there's so much talk about, success and how to be successful. And a lot of folks out there, they try to roll out these one size fits all sort of repertoires as to, hey, if you do this and you get up at 4:00 in the morning and you do that, and you'll be successful. And I always like to point out that there's so many different ways to get to an end goal.
Oh, yeah. And sometimes people think, you're such a motivated guy or maybe a hard worker or driven or something like that. I go out, I do comedy, I work my butt off on the weekend, and then I'll come home, crack a beer, and watch an episode of Love Boat and do nothing. Like I can definitely have some serious do nothing downtime that's sprinkled in hectic schedules and deadlines and travel and everything else.
Yeah. Do you find it at times hard to turn off because you have a lot going on and there is that creative side of you? I know a lot of people that I speak with today, sometimes turning off and finding, a little bit of balance, as they say, it can be a little bit difficult.
No, I mean, my brain is always kind of trying to piece things together and sort of connect some dots. And it's always kind of trying to make sense of where we're at, when we're at it. And I'm always trying to kind of put stuff together, but, and that's where the buck slips come in. I'll just jot something down, I don't wake up in the middle of the night and, write jokes feverishly. I kind of travel with my buck slip, and if something catches my eye or my fancy or my brain or something, I'll just jot it down and see if I can turn it into something. But no, I'm not a real on it all the time, tortured soul.
Yeah, I see a lot of folks out there that are or are becoming that. I also want to ask you too. I know you have I'll call it a bit of a passion for politics. Have you always been into politics?
No, I don't. I never really was. I never really think of myself as like a passion for politics. I'm just sort of examining what's going on when it's going on.
Okay.
And And if I ever see crazy hypocrisy, it always bothers me. But no, it's never been a subject that I've known much about or really even dabbled in. It wasn't, but as I got older and you start getting recruited, like, oh, you got to go on Tucker Carlson or you got to go on this show or that show. And they go, here's the subject. And you find yourself forming thoughts on the subject because now that's what they've asked you to do. So you almost find yourself thinking about it more than I probably formerly would have.
Yeah. I like your approach though, because it's very real. And for those that live with great common sense, you appeal very much to that group.
Yeah, my thing has never really been to try to figure out what people wanted to hear or didn't want to hear or what this side wants or what that side wants. I've just sort of thought I'll form my own opinions. I'll do it subject by subject, and then I will spit out whatever it is I've arrived at. And you can like it or disagree with it or whatever it is, but that shall be the way I operate. I've never really, I've always kind of thought, well, as a comedian, commentator, whatever I am, that's kind of my job. It's not really licking my finger and putting it up to the wind. It's more of just, I'm going to say what I want to say when I want to say it. And that's not going to go over great in certain circles, but I'm not really interested in going over great. I'm just interested in expressing myself.
Yeah, I love that. And to do it the way you do it, it takes a tremendous amount of not confidence, but I always say confidence is derived from knowing who it is that you are. It's like a great hitter, a great athlete. They know their game within the game.
Yeah, I don't, for me, it's not necessarily confidence. It's more like, what are my choices? There's a subject comes up or somebody says to you, what do you think about this? You could either answer exactly what you think about that, or you could try to kind of curtail it and shape it into something that might be more palatable for them. And my feeling is that's not my job. My job isn't to jump ahead to the future and try to figure out how they're going to digest this information, or whether it's going to rub them the wrong way, or whether they'll take umbrage with it. My job is to give my opinion. And that's all I ever do. And I never go into the mode of, well, how's this going to work? How's this going to be perceived? I feel like that's dangerous territory for a comedian, to sort of go, well, here are my thoughts. Now let me modify them so that it'll be more palatable to others who disagree with my thoughts. Doesn't seem like a good approach to comedy.
Yeah. Maybe even anything, right?
Or anything.
At the same time, for you, if you're just, hey, this is what I think, this is who I am, here it is, blah, you got to deal with it.
Yeah, that's how I approach comedy. I'm not extraordinarily truthful person. If you get a horrible haircut and it looks like shit, I'll probably say to you, hey, did you get a haircut? Looking good. And then I'll just walk away. Now, I'm not going to tell you what I really think of your haircut, because that's neither here nor there. There's nothing. My integrity's not at stake. I don't want to make you feel bad on a personal level. So I'm not just someone who just vomits his opinion to everyone all the time. I'm a person who I'll say almost anything just to get along. Like, if you're an Uber driver and you pick me up and you start talking about the earth being flat or hollow, I'll go, yeah, there you go. Yeah, I agree. I just want to get through the Uber ride.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not going to try to coach you up from the back seat of the Camry. But if I'm going on your show and you're going to ask me questions, then I will give you the truth as I know it.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I have one more question for you, and I hope you answer it truthfully. The word champion, I call this the Becoming a Champion show. I feel like we're all on a journey to become a champion. What does the word champion mean to you?
Um, I think it is being the best at an endeavor in that period of time. So I don't really look at myself as a champion, quote unquote, but I did the Toyota Long Beach Celebrity Grand Prix race a few times, and I won as a celebrity, and then I won as a pro the next year. And so for whatever time I was on the podium, I was the champion of that particular event. And I also know it that if you want to, check it online, then you will see that I was the champion of that event. Now, as soon as I was done with that, I didn't look at myself as a champion father or a champion husband or a champion citizen. I just was the champion of that thing when I did it. And if you can scatter enough of those throughout your life, then it'll start taking on the sort of shape of a champion. But I never really look at it as a champion overall. I just would look at it as a champion of that endeavor when you were participating in that endeavor.
Got it. I love it. You shoot it straight. That's the best way to be. Cool. Adam, thank you so much. I love hanging with you, and I'm always interested in what you have to say.
Thanks, Dana. I appreciate it.
So I will talk to you soon, and I'll let you go.
Thanks, my friend.
Cool. Thanks again. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that show as much as I did. I always love sitting down with Adam. He's somebody that always makes me laugh, and just the way he speaks and the way he views things, it makes you think as well. And you say, wait, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. But today, when he shared his journey, like nobody knew that he was working on construction sites, living in apartments with a few other guys before he made it, and we see a lot of these people now, but what did they actually have to do to get to where it is that they are? And that's the story that I love to tell. That's what the Becoming a Champion show is all about. And it says, hey, here's where you started, and these are the things that you experienced and the things that you did in order to become that champion. So I hope you enjoyed today's show. I did. And if you did, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, give us some comments, and share with some friends, especially somebody in your life that's looking to get to the next level. Give them a share. A motivational episode like this could really help them. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Coach Dana Cavalea, and I'll see you next week.